Good morning for those of you in Europe and good afternoon for those of you in China. This is Domenico Di Liello, Knowledge Center Coordinator here at USME Center, and I welcome you to today's webinar. The topic is using free trade zone to sell online in China, a topic that I understand is of a great interest to all of you. And I know all of us, we are really looking forward to today's presentation. Therefore, I don't want to take too much time to introduce the center. I know that many of you are already familiar with the European Union Small and Enterprise Center, what we do here. For those who still don't know, the USME Center is a project funded by the European Union and implemented by a consortium of 6 partners. And our main aim is to assist SMEs to do business here in China. The way we do it is through the provision of a comprehensive range of hands-on information, advices, trainings, and many other supporting services. Um, Today, I would like to remind you that today's presentation, today's webinar is going to last for 1 hour. We will have the typical presentation and a Q&A session at the end of it. Let me just remind you that you can raise your questions and pose your questions in the questions pane that you see on your screen. Um, we will try to answer as many questions as possible during the webinar itself. It might not be possible to answer all of them. In that case, I will encourage you to register on our website, and you see the link to it just at the bottom of this slide, and submit all your questions through the function Ask the Expert. Today's presentation, you can see here the agenda. We will, of course, start by introducing the speakers. We have 2 speakers today, and then the speakers themselves will provide an introduction to the landscape of the e-commerce sector here in China. We also introduce you to the free trade zones, the FTZs. What are the free trade zones? What's their role in with regards to the e-commerce and in particular the cross-border e-commerce. And then we will look at the most common practices when it comes to cross-border e-commerce and what are the expectations for this year. And as I mentioned before, we will have a quick Q&A session at the end of the presentation. But very quickly, and then I'll leave the word to them. The speakers for today are Simon de Rats, who is the general manager of Mates International and the co-founder of DigiDutch, who is a collective of 8 companies specialized in e-commerce services here in China. And we also have Bjorn van der Veen, and he's a general manager of Arctic Solutions and also co-founder of DigiDutch. But I will actually, I would like to hand over to them so they can better introduce their profiles.
All right, great, Domenico. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, EUSME Center. We're both very excited to have this presentation. Also, seeing all the people that have signed up and are still signing up. We see people from all over Europe and also some Chinese names there, so that's really cool. My name is Simon, or Simon. The way it depends on the country where you are. I'm the general manager of Mains. We've been doing cross-border logistics for the last 5 years. Doing some direct mailing and with the post from China to Europe, and since 2 years now also active in the import side to help other companies with their inbound cross-border logistics. Yeah, and do it together with Björn.
Hello, welcome everybody. I'm Björn van der Veen. I've been active in e-commerce my whole professional career, 15 years, up to started with companies like Philips, on the large corporate side.
Okay, great.
On moved to China about 9 years ago.
Yeah. Yes, that's perfect. That's great, and perhaps you want to spend a few words on DigiDutch as well.
Yeah. So actually, both of us are involved in DigiDutch. This is 8 companies based in China. They're trying to do help foreign companies, not only European, but foreign companies sell online in China. And it's mostly Dutch companies based in China, but it is actually for everyone outside of China who wants to sell online. So together we have a long experience in different kind of sectors and areas. So we're there to help you to sell online in China.
Okay, that's great. That's very useful, and I believe that thank both of the speakers, of course, for their availability, their willingness to cooperate with us on this webinar. And I believe since now we have learned more about you, to make things even, it would be good to know more about the profile of the attendees. Uh, at this point, I would launch three question polls, and I will ask the companies in Europe and in China to ask them. The first of the polls will be this. As you can see, are you planning to enter the Chinese e-commerce market in 2016? And for answers are yes for sure, maybe, we are not sure yet. We are already doing these. No, we have no plans in that direction. We will just wait for the majority of you to answer this question. I see we are quickly reaching the 80%. A few seconds more. Okay, I think we have a clear answer here. I will close the first poll right now. I share the results with you. So we have that 26% of attendees answering yes for sure. 16% already in doing business here in China. That's interesting. And the majority, just 53%, maybe they are. So it means they are considering. They're at the early stages of this kind of business, and I'm not sure yet. So I will move to the second poll. And the question will be, if you would enter the Chinese e-commerce market, what kind of return period on your investment would you find acceptable? And I will launch it right now. Again, we will wait for the 80% of the attendees to give the answer. I believe you're not seeing the question yet. Might be a problem of internet. Okay, I believe you see the question and the answer right now. Yes, because we are also receiving the answers. Hmm. We're quickly approaching the 80%. So I will close the second poll, and we have a 32%. I'm going to share the results with you. A 30% of answering of companies here saying they will expect somehow their business to be sustainable, if not profitable, in less than 1 year. 50% around 2 years, and 18% in less than 3 years. I think this is something we want to comment on in a moment. After actually I launched the third and last poll, which is, to which of the following categories does your company belong to? You might have to wait a few seconds to actually see the question on your screen. Internet is not as fast as we all hope at times. Okay, we will close this third and last poll. We have a 22% brand owner, 32% trader, broker, wholesaler, and 43% other. So we have seen the results of these three polls. I may ask the speakers to comment on the answer, and perhaps then continue with the rest of the presentation.
All right. So yeah, I think it is very interesting to have everyone to see what kind of audience we have here. Most people are actually already active or planning on being active online. So it's very, very, very cool for us to have these kind of people with the experience on as well. Most are have the brand and logistics. So let's just continue, and let's continue with the presentation. Let's tell our story, and in the end, raise your questions during or after, and then we will try to get your answers as good as possible. Domenico, can you give us the control of the screen?
Sure. I believe you have the control of the screen.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're loading it, so we can already start with it.
So we're going to start with giving you a small overview of the Chinese e-commerce market. As everybody knows, that's also why you signed up for this webinar. This is, of course, is growing, it's booming. You have, of course, a domestic e-commerce market where we are not going to focus on too much. We're really going to focus on the cross-border, as it's called, aspect of it. So foreign companies entering the Chinese or being active on the Chinese e-commerce market for different reasons. We will explain later where the differences are between domestic and cross-border. I think I want to mention a few of the aspects that are important in China. You can all see on the slide the big numbers. There's a high use of mobile. This is also different than, for instance, in Europe. In China, people, more than 60% of the e-commerce buys are via mobile. For instance, in Europe, this is only 30%. This is due to the fact that Chinese, especially in the third and fourth tier cities or the more rural areas, did not always have access to internet via desktop or a laptop. And currently, due to the rise of cheap smartphones, especially by Chinese manufacturers, a lot more people have access to the internet, and so they can also make e-commerce, mobile commerce purchases. Currently, the latest growth numbers for 2015 are that the e-commerce market has again grown by 33%, which is of course an enormous rise which you cannot compare to any other country in the world at the moment.
All right, let's zoom into a little bit on the free trade zones. I think it's interesting to mention that the Ministry of Commerce mentioned that it will be 6.5 trillion yuan will be sold online in the coming years. That's a target that will be something like 20% of the foreign trade. So I think that's always good to keep in mind that how much development is in this side of the foreign trade within the Chinese market. I'm trying to open a slide just to give you a little bit of a feeling of where the free trade zones are in the map of China. It's not really responding. Up till last year, there were 8. Domenico, can you help me out here? Up till the last year, there were 8 free trade zones in different areas, which can be used for the inbound cross-border logistics. Recently, there have been a few more added. Mostly in the north, Qingdao and Dalian, and a little bit more in the east in Hefei and Suzhou. I'm trying to give you the picture of where that will be. Hold on for 1 sec. The number that I just mentioned was actually recently published in the China Daily, so it's actually straight from the Chinese source. Yes, this is the slide I want. So here you see the different areas. So you have a few cities. I think the major cities to zoom out is Hangzhou. Currently, most of the zones are copying Hangzhou. Crucial to understand that this is a pilot area. Pilot area means it's just test. So the Chinese government is trying to figure out what is the best approach to maximize the gains for them, for the country, and also for the businesses. So it's a very business-driven approach, full supported by the government. So they're just trying as well. So the interpretation in each zone is sometimes a little bit different. That's because the rules are still, the basic rules are the same, but it's really business driven in the interpretation on how to do it. We see Hangzhou very high, of course, driven by Alibaba. Ningbo, Shanghai are developing now during this year. Guangzhou is definitely, I think, number 2 compared after Hangzhou in their developments, mostly because it's just so close to the Hong Kong border. And the inlands are getting more and more traction because mostly because the trains from Europe to China also getting access to bigger cities in sort of the west side of China. So let's go to the slide where we zoom into the most important slide, I think, of the presentation.
Yeah. So this is a slide where we will try to explain to you the different models and how a typical cross-border operation would work. There it is. As you can see, we start on the left side, assuming that you would have the part of the overseas, the role of the overseas supplier. If you work if you want to conduct business in an e-commerce in a cross-border way, there's 2 ways. You can ship your products to China by ship or by plane. One is called express. The other one is the normal 4 to 6 weeks. Usually it takes. What's very important in this process for both shipping methods is in the free trade zone, the warehouse. So this is a bonded warehouse. So this is a warehouse which is being operated by logistics companies in cooperation with China Customs. For people who don't know, when your stock is in a bonded warehouse, it means that they are not haven't cleared customs yet. So they are still have not officially entered China from a legal and tax perspective. Companies use this, for instance, to ship products to China if they're not sure if they can sell their whole stock. If you talk about the traditional way, now since I think 3 years. There is this new cross-border, or relatively new, the cross-border policy, and now you also have bonded warehouses which are allowed for cross-border operations. So not every warehouse, bonded warehouse, is suitable for this. So you would have to look for a partner that has this license, basically. So when your goods are in the free trade zone, you would have to start selling. So if you go to the real center of the picture, you see it could be a B2C e-shop. It can be your own web shop. It can be a WeChat store. It can be on Tmall. It can be on Jingdong. It can be on many different platforms. You localize there your operations. You start selling your products. When you start selling your products, there has to be, of course, quick customs clearance. So there's, for instance, you're selling milk powder. You're selling the milk powder. You sell 1 can, then it needs to be customs cleared. So within this, in this model, there is a 4-hour customs clearance guaranteed, which also allows you to have a quick delivery. So last mile delivery. So this is the second line from the bottom. You would use, for instance, local speed posts or the local delivery to get your products to the end consumer. Obviously, when you are working or when you are making selling products to the Chinese consumer, you also need to think about how do I accept the payment. Chinese consumers want to, of course, pay in RMB. If you are working in this cross-border model, you might not have a Chinese company set up, so you also don't have a Chinese bank account, which also could give you problems for collection of the RMB. So within this model, the government also now allows cross-border transactions. They go via cross-border. So the consumer makes a local payment to your shop, but then you still need to do a cross-border payment to the country of origin. For instance, if you're selling from Germany, you would still want to collect the revenue, the revenue from your sales. You would like to collect in euros on your German bank account if you're a German company. This is now allowed also within this policy, and it has huge advantages also because normally currency is controlled by the Chinese government. Within normal B2B or other business deals, the currency is controlled, so it's not that easy even to have funds going out of the country. So when you have these two parts covered, then of course there's also a part about the returns. Normally in e-commerce, depending on the business you're in, you would have between 5 to 30% return rate, depending on your goods. Within this cross-border model, it is often not advised to you to actually return the goods to a cross-border, to a free trade zone warehouse, because of the administrative hassle, basically, that this gives. So the returns you would actually keep within China, keep them within the Chinese rules and regulations.
Yeah, so this is an overview. I think during the presentation we will zoom in a little bit more on some specific areas where we will just give you a little bit understanding of what is the common practice. Let's zoom a little bit in on the import options that you have as a seller. Trying to get the next slide. I got this slide actually from a presentation I attended recently about e-commerce logistics in Shanghai, and they show us different kind of ways of how things are being imported. This was on the case for jewelry. I think because it covered the area quite well, I wanted to address this. You see 4 columns, Daigo. Daigo in the bottom I also explained is someone actually who buys for you. If you go to big shopping malls, there will be just Chinese queuing up for the discounts to buy, and then they buy it and then they will sell it online on their own web shop or within friends or family and put a little margin on top and still be able to be cheaper than the retail prices here in China. So there's definitely something to consider. It's definitely a strategy, especially for individuals. Of course, you cannot do big quantity, but it's happening on a daily basis where people take it with them in their suitcase or sending it by post or by express. So that's just, so it's called Daigo in Chinese. Overseas, you have the overseas, which is just people sending more like B2B, where you still have to do the import duties and VAT upon arrival. The retail, the stores, of course, that also want to get their margin on top of it. And you have the cross-border e-commerce, the CBEC, we call it for short, cross-border e-commerce in the free trade zones. This picture just to show you what is the real advantage of the cross-border e-commerce, what the free trade zone, what do they have to offer. In general, it comes down that you can minimize the duty and the VAT that you can have to pay because everything is custom cleared on individual parcel. And in this way, you can also have huge volume kept in your warehouse. So if you're in your bonded warehouse, you have a high volume. You can really keep the delivery time short, and because of the VAT and the duty, you can also keep the costs quite low. So this is really a key point of why this is such a hot topic.
There's one thing I would like to add to that. Apart from the duties and the VATs, which are, I think, the main advantage to use this CBC method, there's also a huge advantage with the CIQ requirements are lower. So in China, when you want to sell products from outside, from any country, you need to have a CIQ approval, which means that you have some kind of a product license, you could call it, a license to sell those products. And for some product categories, this could be a very lengthy and difficult process. For instance, as an example, we had a customer in the food supplement area, and they have been trying for years to get their products approved, and still failed because they kept being labeled as medicine, which they were not. They were vitamin supplements and these kind of products. Once they started, once they went the CEBC way, they could enter the market within weeks. So this is also a big advantage.
All right. So let's go to the next, where we show a little bit more of the advantages of the free trade zones. We separated actually in three types: non-bonded warehouse, direct mailing, and bonded warehouse. Just to give a little bit explanation, there it is, what it means. Non-bonded is really the traditional, so it just comes as in a container, you clear it, you keep it in a warehouse, there you can still pick and pack it and then send out to your consumer. No clearance anymore, it's already custom cleared when it arrives. But direct mailing is just that you send it out from your own warehouse in Europe, pack it, send it to your with the post or express, and send it out, and let the last mile delivery partner help for the custom clearance with the customer. The bonded warehouse is the one that we're talking about today. Just to show you a little bit of the advantages, if we zoom into several levels, looking at clearance, looking at tax, looking at your ID information, about transit time, registration, and licenses. So especially if you look at the non-bonded warehouse, the advantage is that you don't really need the customer ID because it's custom cleared on your company. And also the advantage is that you still can deliver fast, 2 to 3 weekdays, like working days. The other ones are mentioned are a little bit less of an advantage compared to the bonded warehouse. For direct mailing, the advantage is definitely quite similar to bonded warehouse. I think the biggest disadvantage is the transit time. It's 10 to 15 working days if you do by post, or maybe with express a little bit faster. For the free trade zone, really the key part is that having a free trade zone or operating your goods from a bonded warehouse in a free trade zone doesn't mean that you don't have to do any registration. You still need to register products. The registration time is a little bit shorter. You do need an entity in the free trade zone in most regions, actually most zones. I think Shanghai you don't need, but you do need a foreign company or an entity that's registered on which you can register all your products. But it goes much faster. You don't have to wait months or years to get things approved, just like what Björn just mentioned in the example. I think it's very important to understand that it's not that easy, but it's definitely possible, and we can help you do that, of course. The disadvantage is you do need a little bit more IT integration. You need to get all your data collected, your logistics data, your shop data, your custom clearance data. These things need to be connected. That's why we also see that a lot of these free trade zones, we just had all the different cities before in a slide, they operate actually like local heroes because they're not interchangeable. You cannot, when you use a Hangzhou warehouse free trade zone, you cannot suddenly move the goods to Shanghai. It's a different system, it's different company, different organizations that are involved. So it's really still very locally based. So it's very good to understand that it's not that interchangeable from city to city. It does have a lot of advantages. The registration, the foreign company, still very quick delivery time. You have low taxes and the CIQ, which has been mentioned just now by Björn. Let's zoom into the kind of products. We go regularly to bonded warehouses, and we kind of run into always the same kind of products. Trying to get the here.
So if you as Simon mentioned, it is we see the same kind of products in all these warehouses. A lot of these products are still focused on baby, mother and baby, I should say, but mostly baby. Of course, everybody knows the example and has seen probably in his own country Chinese queuing up for supermarkets and pharmacies trying to buy milk powder. This is by far the largest and the most popular cross-border e-commerce product. Also diapers, baby food, so more it's like hip from Germany is quite popular. Also cosmetics, cosmetics from Europe, but also from within Asia, so from Korea, from Japan, beauty masks, for instance, for women. Organic products you're starting to see a lot more. Organic, I think, has been the last 2 years also quite a fast-growing category. This is also due to the nature of why Chinese buy from foreign products. This is because of all the food scandals. With the milk powder, this is the best and the most well-known example. In 2007, there was a scandal with milk powder, infant milk formula from local brands. Quite a large number of babies died. A lot got sick. Since then, almost nobody no Chinese parents are willing to give their kid local infant milk formula. So this is why this has become
we
so
know
important.
we're both just become a dad, so
yeah, and so and we're not giving our kids any local products either. So health, healthy life. That's kind of what people are looking for. Healthy life for their kids mostly, but also for themselves.
Yeah, I think someone told me that 30% of the income of a Chinese is spent on their baby.
Yep.
They have one, most of them. I think the policy has changed, so that also increases the opportunity, of course. There will be more babies in China, so there will also be more sales on baby products.
Yeah.
And the interest is, these are really the popular brands that we see, but definitely there's a lot of opportunities for newcomers to the market as well. It's not only, currently these are just the hot items. We know which products are hot, but it doesn't mean that there's exclusivity. It's just it will take investment and marketing to get your unknown brand in China, get it known. I think to approach 1.3 billion people, it's not a 1,000 or 2,000 euro investment. You need a little bit more to get in a little bit traction and get your brand into the market. We're going to come to that later. I'm trying to get to the next slide. Yeah. So looking at the categories and taxes, this is just a summary, a short list. We still have a long list. We will try if we can submit it to EUSME Center later. Just to take a few out of this, the commodities, comparing the B2B trade, the general trade with the cross-border e-commerce, the tax and the duty, the VAT, it's a little bit complex. We're trying to get 2 examples out, just looking at the time. Cosmetics, for example, is a very interesting one. Actually, today I got a call, I think she's listening too, about this cosmetics, free trade zones. There's a very high personal tax, much higher than if you would import it, but still very popular to use free trade zone because you don't have it, you don't need all the CIQ, all the checks and the documents. Especially, I think Björn mentioned it as well recently to me, that a lot of brands don't want it to be tested on animals, and that's actually the criteria for Chinese customs to accept it. It has to be tested on animals. So yes, it looks like it's more expensive to do free trade zone, but actually you get an opportunity to see if your brand would succeed in China at all. What is good to understand is that the threshold that is in place. Currently, a lot of the taxes, they use 50 RMB. 50, if you have to pay more than 50 RMB, 50 RMB on duties, then you will have to pay this amount. So if your total value of your parcel has more than 50 RMB, you need to pay this. So that means, for example, for cosmetics, if you have 100 RMB, then 50% of 1 RMB is more than 50 RMB. It's 50 RMB. So you're just at the threshold, and you will have to pay the duty. So we see that a lot of these free trade zones also have this in place to try to prevent themselves from paying, or the customer paying and going over it.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that this is a personal tax. The personal tax is also called a mail tax. This is a tax that the consumer would have to pay. So you could import your goods duty free, but the tax basically shifted to the consumer side. But cross-border e-commerce platforms, sellers, they're actively encouraging their customers they're advising them. For instance, again, let's stick with the milk powder example. There, the threshold is 500 RMB. So there, and you now an average can, 800-gram can of milk powder costs about 180 RMB. So they're advising their buyers to only order 2 or to make a new order. So if you need 4 cans, then make 2 orders of two cans. So then you prevent the personal tax. The government is obviously also aware of this kind of behavior or advice. So there could be some changes coming up there in the future. There's coming, actually there's in the market, or you're hearing in the industry, you're hearing now also that the Chinese government might have a flat rate, flat personal tax rate of 12%, but this is just gossip and rumor at this point. This is not an official policy yet.
All right, this is about the free trade zones. Let's zoom into some common practices regarding this online strategy, logistics, returns, payments. We took out some of the topics that we think are very crucial to mention. So.
Yeah, of course, if you have your products imported in the right way or in the way as we just described, you also need to start selling. And many people know about Tmall. A lot of people even heard of Jingdong, Tmall Global or Jingdong Worldwide. But of course, it's not always the right strategy for everybody. How we see it is that if you're an SME or a multinational, you're coming from a very different place. So if you're an SME, it's often better to start first your own online store, online store / WeChat store, which is the same. You could use the same backend. You start small with more limited investment. You can keep the stock in your home country and send by post or express. So you don't also need to invest too much in stock, because that's also could represent quite a large part of your investment. And what is very important is that you also have full data ownership. What a lot of people don't know is that when you work with, especially as an SME, when you work with Tmall or JD, you don't have full access to all the customer data. They own it. Some large multinationals, they sometimes can make deals to have access, but still it's still not full access. When you have your own systems, you have your own web shop, you have your own WeChat store, you have much more customer data which can also benefit you in a later stage. If you're a multinational, you're actually coming from a little bit of a different place, because starting on Tmall and Jingdong, but let's just for the sake of this explanation focus on Tmall, you need a much larger investment. You need a deposit, you need startup fees, you need quite high commission fees. Commission fees depending very wildly per category. You need to also have deep pockets. Starting on Tmall, putting your products, opening a Tmall shop is not a guarantee that your products will sell. Because don't forget, this is the hottest e-commerce market in the world. So everybody is going there. But of course, all the Chinese companies are there, but also also the rest of the world is there. Right? The US companies, European countries, other Asian companies. So they're all competing at the same market. So it's very competitive. So you would still to gain traffic to your Tmall store, you would still need to have a large marketing budget. So this also results that not everybody can be profitable on Tmall. So we would advise to really choose a strategy that's suitable for you and not just blindly go to Tmall.
Yes, especially for SMEs. Most SMEs that are listening, having your full ownership of your data is crucial to make a difference in the market. You can connect with your customers, and the customers give you data. One of the DigiDutch members also said that 90 or 95% of every purchase comes with a chat, comes with a question. This is the time to connect to your customer. So if you have access to what the customers are asking, and you can follow up on it, and you can ask them questions back, that's crucial for SMEs to make a difference. Collect your information, adjust your strategy, add new products, and learn from it by just using the group that is buying from you. So
because don't forget, when you're an SME, nobody will know your brand, and when you're a large multinational, a lot of Chinese also know all the big foreign brands, of course, and they are looking for those on Tmall. But when you're an SME, you are more operating in a niche, and you have to build your brand, and then you're having full data ownership and having your own sales channels is often much more worthwhile.
Right.
Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, I'm trying.
So if you look at, we already touched upon a few earlier. In China, basically, it's divided between marketplaces, like you know in Europe or in the US, where it's Amazon and it's eBay. Here it's Tmall, it's JD, it's Yihaodian. Yihaodian is more traditionally more focused on food, but it's also in the end a general marketplace. Tmall and JD are also general marketplaces. Recently, you've seen Yang Matou, so that's the third logo you see from the top. Yang Matou is purely a cross-border e-commerce platform, so that has been around for only 3 years, growing very fast. Also allowing C2C sales, like Tmall of Alibaba is also doing with Taobao. And then you have some more vertical ones, so vertical marketplaces. So there are less, for instance, Suning. Suning is a vertical electronics marketplace. Suning is also a huge electronics company, like with stores offline into the 10,000s probably in China. They have, but their online store developed slowly also into a marketplace where others can sell their products. For Dangdang and for Yihaodian, it's a little bit the same. So they're more vertical. There's others, and you're starting to see that now more and more, because people, when you really know what you want, sometimes it's better price-wise, and it's also as a seller, it's sometimes better to start on a vertical marketplace instead of the huge giant that Tmall is. On the other side, you of course still have, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise, like, oh, you cannot do anything with a web shop in China. Of course you can. You need some smart marketing, but you can have and it's worthwhile to have your own web shop, to have your own WeChat store. And also, what is coming now, the last year, it's also the O2O setup, so where you use the CBEC way of importing your products. And
Always online to offline, or offline to online.
Yeah, online to offline, and because if you import your products in the CIBC way, basically it is only allowed to sell your products B2C and online. So that means you couldn't, in a normal retail store, in a brick and mortar store, you wouldn't be able to sell those products. But if you use an O2O, an online to offline model, of course you can. So that, not wanting to dig too deep into this, but basically imagine a product display where your products are displayed and there's a QR code on the side. People scan the QR code, they can touch the product, they can see the product, but they cannot take it home and they cannot pay for it in the store. So they scan the product, pay online, and have the product delivered within a day later, for instance. And this is now something that's really starting.
All right. We still want to have time, of course, for the questions, so let's go through the logistic options. So in the next slide, we're just going to go. We summarize a little bit the options that currently is common practice now in most companies use. There are I defined 5 options. The post, they're in the bottom right. Post, express, non-bonded, bonded, and I call it bonded express. I don't know if it's a word, but I thought it was practical. I use the PostNL logo just because we're Dutch and this is one of my customers. I think they're listening too. So it could be La Post, Royal Mail, Deutsche Post,
B-Post,
Correos, can be many things instead. It's just you pack it. So left you will have your warehouse, overseas warehouse. You let the post send it, custom cleared by post, and then last mile trucking. Second option is express. I think the first two are very clear. The 3 is the traditional way for non-bonded. You do the custom clearance first before it goes to your warehouse. The last one is the biggest one, the 4 and 5. So it's the bonded and the bonded express. And I think just to show, and we emphasize as well, the moment of clearance is the crucial part of the difference of the free trade zones. The moment of clearance is not done on the total shipment, it's done on the individual parcel. So whether it's mixed with multiple goods, it's on the individual parcels. So even express companies can send it pallets to the free trade zone and then still unsort it, pack it, label it, or even already labeled from the Netherlands or from Europe, France, and then already pre-labeled and just hand it over to the last mile. I marked it in red because this is the crucial difference, just to get it into a flow, what it is, the free trade zone, and what is the solution. And this is the common practice, how people are doing the shipments. Going to the next, on the return handling. I'm trying to get the next slide, it will pop up for sure. The common practice is actually that, Björn mentioned also, that if you return something, it is very difficult to get it back to a bonded warehouse. Actually, most of the goods are returned to non-bonded warehouse. And actually, most of the goods are being destroyed after they're being returned, which is actually strange, but if you allow me to explain it, one of the reasons to return to non-bonded is definitely the rules, the paperwork you need to do to get it exported back into a free trade zone again. That's very complex. And when you, for example, send food, or you send a brand, if you would say Louis Vuitton, you don't know if the bag that you're getting back, if that's actually the real bag. Could be just a fake bag that somebody's returning. Could also be that the milk powder has been replaced with fake milk powder. You don't know. So what we see happening in common practice is that most of the things that are being returned are being destroyed. So that's, I think, is part of the maturity of the market. Every consumer still has the right to return, a legal right, I think 7 to 10 days. It should be on the websites as well. People do use it a lot. Chinese return a lot. But you have to consider that it's very complex to get it out. You can ship it out with express and post back to your own warehouse. Most people, what they do is to store it somewhere and try to relabel it if you can, but most of the time destroy. Anything to add on this? Or?
No.
All right. Going into the payments, so that we have enough time left.
Sorry for going a little bit faster here in the end, but as Simon said, we do like to keep some time for questions. There's a lot of there's many different payment methods in China. Obviously, it's crucial to have the right ones. In China, the biggest one, the biggest two actually are Alipay and UnionPay. UnionPay is a payment system that is developed together with all the national banks, all the Chinese banks. MasterCard and Visa, although they're used a lot in daily life, they are less used online. Alipay obviously is the payment system that has been created by Alibaba. Because Alibaba and Tmall is so big, Alipay is also used a lot, but you see it a lot more now. You also start to see Alipay in common life, paying for your groceries with Alipay, just scanning it on with your mobile. Or the one that is growing very fast recently, the last 2 years, is WeChat. So WeChat Wallet, which is WeChat is a platform similar to WhatsApp and Facebook and combined
every social media.
Every social media you can think of.
Order your taxi, or if you pay your food, go grocery shopping and pay.
Yeah. You can manage your whole life with WeChat. You can chat with your friends, and you can manage the rest of your life also. Video calling. It is WeChat. If you don't know it, look it up. I think it's the most innovative product ever coming out of China. Obviously, they also have a payment system, and because of the popularity of WeChat, also that's growing now. Their payment system is also growing a lot. So these are the three. If you choose three, Alipay, WePay, and UnionPay are the ones you should
Especially have. If you zoom in, what Björn earlier said, that most Chinese use mobile. These two, Alipay, WeChat, are very focused on mobile. I think for WeChat itself, the social media WeChat, not WeChat Pay, is actually 80% of the time that people spend on their mobile is on the platform.
Yeah.
That's why it's also very hot to sell your products there, but also for payment solutions. Crucial to be connected to that and be familiar with what it takes to be there. Let us sum up what we expect for this year, 2016. I think we saw all the hot products we zoomed into some hot products. I think we can safe to say there will be more diversity in the products. Chinese the middle class is growing. They want diversity, different new brands, different products. So definitely opportunity for foreign and Western and European brands to pop up. O2O, which is online to offline, offline to online, just to have your product physically there, but not selling at that location, and by QR code direct them to your website, collect the data, use that data, and promote and use the marketing to get them buying again in the future.
You also see now, since very recently, talking recently as 2 weeks, fresh food is being allowed for cross-border e-commerce, only from Shanghai, but the other cities will follow quickly. This is, I think, in my personal opinion, this is the biggest trend in 2016 within cross-border, because food is allowed now. The expectations are that that this is going to grow also domestically. So the total e-commerce sales in this category in food is expected to rise with 55%. Which is a lot more than it's almost double of how the market as a whole is growing.
All right. So yeah, and the government share policy will definitely change. I think the difference between bonded and non-bonded will definitely become shorter, smaller. What the impact will be is not sure yet. There's some rumors in the market, but not very clear policies yet are in place. But the government will, I think, after Chinese New Year, come out with a statement on this side. That's what we expect for this year. We are contact information as well. We are now open for questions. You can submit the questions on the seminar, or you can just contact us. So, Domenico.
We also provided our information earlier, so afterwards, if you have questions, you can also always contact us. But for now, fire away.
Yes, we have contact details of our experts at the beginning of this presentation, which I want to remind all the attendees they will find on our website very soon in the PDF version. And let me just thank the experts. The presentation was extremely interesting, a lot of insights. I think the attendees were very satisfied. We have a few questions. We are running out of time. We can't really ask the more specific ones because we're really running out of time. I believe it's more beneficial to companies to answer some general questions, to cover as many questions as possible. The first will be, from your perspective, based on your experience, what are the most common mistakes SMEs or companies in general, but specifically SMEs, do when approaching the Chinese e-commerce, I would say business, cross-border or not just cross-border?
Yeah, not that clear, but most common mistakes for people to come online, sell online or using Free Trade Zone. I think most common mistakes is that the assumption that your brand that's working in your home country also will work in China, without doing any proper market scan on what is there already in the market. I think it's very important that you orientate first on what is there before you start. Especially when you're new to the market, you need to know who's there already and what's there already. We see companies taking on Tmall or whatever without really having a good understanding of what the opportunity is. They think once you have the store, it will go by itself. That's not the case.
I think another common mistake is that the companies expect to be successful too quickly. Yes, there is a lot you can be very successful in China. It's a huge market. There's also a lot of competition, so it's also not easy. So without wanting to scare everybody off,
need locals.
it is not low cost. For instance, marketplaces in Europe are actually a low cost, like Amazon and eBay are a low cost way to start your e-commerce operation. In China, it's the other way around. It's actually more expensive than having your own operation.
Yes.
So expect to the need to invest and expect to also take 2 to 3 years to start to become really profitable. I think earlier people answered that a lot of people answered within 1 year to see return. I think that's going to be a challenge sometimes.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely a good answer. Let me just add this for the lack of knowledge sometimes SMEs have with regards to the Chinese market. I mean, we also try to stress this point. This is something that we see not just in the e-commerce sector and but also in others, food and beverage and so on. So what we actually highlight to our companies to build knowledge before coming to China. There are sources out there, your company, the EUSME Center, the Chambers of Commerce, which are parts of this project, that can actually help them to build knowledge before coming to China. Now, following, I would like you to really summarize, because we received this question, what are the product categories you see are more uh, are the best candidates, let's say, for SMEs to export to China in this form of cross-border e-commerce? Because I remember we mentioned like mother and child care, some food and beverages. More specifically,
I think organic food is very important.
We see the question also here. Organic food, yes, you can.
Yeah, and I think it's a big category. As said, also because of the food scandals, but also product safety scandals. So anything to do with baby and child, but also organic food, that's an important category. Food supplements.
yeah,
Yeah, cosmetic, mostly
cosmetics,
that.
Yeah.
definitely.
Dominic, can I just run through a few questions quickly that I see here popping up?
Definitely.
Let's see. Someone's asking, give me some web links for free trade zone regulations. In the presentation, there are some cities and there are some links specifically for that area. Like I said, every free trade zone has their own regulations. Is WeChat wallet safe?
Yes, it's as safe as any other payment method.
It's an official channel,
It's an
acknowledged
official
by
channel
banks
by the Chinese bank,
and
and
the government.
if you see, everybody in China is using it, also for their daily purchases in supermarkets and everything. So yes, it's safe.
We saw that the attendees were going up and down, and somewhere it actually was full. So thank you all for signing up. It's very cool that everybody is. We have more than 100 people listening in. You can also watch this back. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on the EU SME Center. Our contact details are there. We're trying to get some questions covered, but we can definitely not get all the things covered.
Yes,
Yes,
definitely.
question of future for the SME.
Yes. Perhaps we will have another webinar together with you and to further discuss about these topics. And maybe we give the chance to companies to submit their questions. I think we really reached our time limit. I would just like to thank you again for your availability. This webinar was extremely useful. Let me just remind the attendees that on the themes of the e-commerce in general, the USME Center is going to publish an update of the e-commerce sector report. We are going to publish also a new report on digital marketing and one specific report on selling online, food and beverage selling online. We also have something new on the training side. We have a training on food and beverage selling online, of course, products in the food and beverage category. We also have another training in how to sell online in China in general. And let me just remind you the next webinar, February the 2nd on smart cities. I think this is all, and I would like to thank again the speakers and all the attendees. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.